So this is a rare thing. We're not usually together on a Saturday night, but this mystery around Jimmy Kimmel is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Plus, we get some subpoenas to talk about. So I thought I would join you. It's good to have you here. Make sure you subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. Jimmy Kimmel's show has been mysteriously canceled, ladies and gentlemen, and we're not getting a lot of transparency, if you would, from ABC as to why this happened. So it started earlier in the week. On Thursday, all of a sudden, there were some guests that were supposed to come on. David Duchovny was one who, we haven't heard that name in a little while, shall we say. I certainly haven't. And he and some others apparently got a note, according to the Daily Mail, saying suddenly, okay, we're not gonna have a show tonight. And we'll reach out when in fact we do. And the word on the street was this was all because of, look at this, I've got it, what do you know? I got the show on my phone as well, so that's what that was. All of a sudden, people are like, well, what's going on? What's going on? And there are some reports that there was a personal matter that was in fact the issue. So if it was a personal matter, why didn't the show come back on Friday? Apparently they ran a rerun on Friday, so a rerun on Thursday, a rerun on Friday, and ABC isn't saying boo, nor is Jimmy. Like, they've been asked for comments and nobody's got anything to say other than it's a personal issue. That's what's being reported. Well, personal, his wife apparently is very angry all the time, allegedly, after losing relationships with Trump voting family members. Jimmy Kimmel's wife is angry all the time after losing relationships with Trump voting family members. Apparently, this was reported on a podcast. The wife went out on a podcast and complained about this. I don't know if I totally believe it. Was this on his podcast? I guess it was. Is this not just like what we saw the other day with Stephen Colbert? Stephen Colbert coming out from CBS, the late night show host, and saying, I'm actually more conservative than people give me credit for. I'm more conservative than people think. It's like, okay, Stephen, I'm sorry, your show's already been canceled. You're losing like tens of millions of dollars a year. Like, it's over, buddy. and Larry Ellison's son, David Ellison, with Skydance, just came in and bought Paramount, CBS, and they've already canceled your contract. So I don't think that's coming back, even though I think you're trying to appeal to conservatives saying, hey, really, I'm just a normal person. I'm more conservative than you think. And now you get Jimmy Kimmel's wife saying, I have got tons of members of my family that voted for Trump, and I'm really upset that I'm losing my relationships with them, and I'm really upset that my husband might be losing his job over the disastrous show that he has that doesn't seem to get any ratings. Here's what went down. Again, if you think about what had happened in the past, he had been under a ton of fire, right? So this is, normally we wouldn't necessarily report on something like this. We'd say, okay, maybe he's having a personal matter. Who really cares? But the reason it suddenly becomes news is because of what happened with my late friend Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was made fun of after being, just so devastatingly executed at that event in Utah, right? And this guy, this idiot, Kimmel, who thinks he's funny and he's not, goes on his show, and after everybody knew exactly what had went down, and it was already reported on the radicalization of this guy, this young guy that shot him, he said some really heinous stuff. And tried to insinuate that somehow this guy was part of MAGA, which he certainly was not, okay? He definitely was not. And so that's why this is important. Normally, again, maybe we wouldn't care that he's suddenly off the air. But I'm telling you, we care right now because we don't know why he was mysteriously canceled. We don't know why the show was taken off air, or why ABC is saying nothing, or why there are reports that it's a personal matter. And now it's timed coincidentally with his wife saying, oh, I've got family members that are Trump supporters, just as Stephen Colbert goes out on a podcast and says, I'm more conservative than you think. It's like they're all groveling. They're all begging for their jobs here. Again, don't forget, you had all of those affiliates all over the country canceling Jimmy Kimmel. Remember that 20% of ABC's affiliates canceled Jimmy Kimmel after the disastrous, disgusting, gross things that he said about my friend Charlie Kirk. Charlie didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve any of that, okay? We all know that. But for this comedian to get on and say the things that he said, I'm just going to say it right here and now, okay? One, it shouldn't have happened. But two, if that's your kind of humor, go do it on MSNBC. Don't be doing it on federally controlled airwaves. And this is where the FCC comes in. And you know what? The FCC is coming in. They already launched an investigation. A new study, by the way, out of MRC this week shows that all the coverage is still continually biased. 87%, ladies and gentlemen, of all the shutdown coverage, what do you know, is biased towards Democrats. Again, that study coming out of MRC, I'll get into some details of it, but the reality is the FCC knows this, Brandon Carr knows this, and he knows he's backed by the 1934 Communications Act, which says that they've got an obligation to their communities. They've deserted their communities, if you would, because they care about one thing and one thing only, and that's their Democrat talking points. I'm telling you, he went on the air on Monday, right, after the whole thing had happened with Charlie, and we already knew by then that any kind of chatter about this kid being MAGA was totally wrong. So much so that Larry, what's his name, the constitutional law professor that's like begging for a gig at MSNBC if he doesn't already have one. He was out there having to apologize for some of the things that he put on Twitter. And yet Kimmel and his producers thought it was still okay to say what they said. Well, they got in trouble. 20% of the affiliates canceled them. And then you had him begging, saying, after the fact, when he was finally brought back on air, it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. Going on to say, nor is it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. To some, my remarks felt either ill-timed or unclear. I get why you're upset. Yeah, well, that really was an apology, as we discussed at the time. Now, was it? And so a lot of people were still upset about it. He wasn't backtracking. He didn't say, gee, I was wrong about the MAGA stuff. He didn't apologize directly to Erica Kirk, who deserved it. And he didn't acknowledge any defamation or direct misleading statements. Instead, he was focusing on his intention and interpretation, because suddenly he's the victim, right? He's the victim. I'm sorry, Jimmy. You know what? You get to live another day. Literally. Charlie didn't. All right? So I don't know why your show was canceled on Thursday, and why you ran a rerun on Thursday, and why you ran another rerun on Friday, and why nobody at ABC is saying boo. But I'll tell you, if you're gone, I don't have a lot of pity for you. And I bet you, Erica, she's a more forgiving person, let's just say, than I am. But, she's kind of like a saint. She's, I guess, guided primarily by her religion, and she is forgiving. But I'm going to go with Trump on the, I would never have forgiven that guy. And I certainly wouldn't have forgiven Jimmy Kimmel. I don't think she's really being asked here in this interview that she did with my former colleague, Jesse Waters, whether she's forgiving Kimmel. But she is being asked about the whole situation because, again, don't forget, this woman got no apology. Interestingly, this interview airs, and the very next day, Kimmel's gone mysteriously off the air in reruns? Watch.
Jimmy Kimmel lied about your husband's murder and didn't really apologize. What would you say to Jimmy Kimmel?
Same thing I told Sinclair. They asked, I haven't really told anybody this, so they asked, do you want Jimmy to give you an apology? Do you want to be on his show? How can we make it right? Through our team, I responded. I said, tell them thank you, we received their note. This is not our issue, not our mess. If you want to say I'm sorry to someone who's grieving, go right ahead. But if that's not in your heart, don't do it. I don't want it. I don't need it.
No, she doesn't need it. She doesn't need any of it. He needs her. That's what he needs. He needs to be begging for her forgiveness. But I don't know what's going on. I mean, mysteriously canceled. Think about that. It comes as we get more and more information about how biased the media has been throughout all of this. If you guys watch this show, we cover this a lot. We cover this a lot because the bias is off the charts. And I think it's kind of amazing that Americans, they pushed back in this election cycle and they elected Donald Trump in spite of the media. It really was in spite of the media because they had their own bias that they were pointing to, and they're continuing to do this. I mean, the MRC report, they did a research report, Media Research Center, aka newsbusters.org. And they looked at all of this and they found, guess what, 87% of government shutdown coverage on ABC, on CBS, and on NBC, it favors Democrats. And their point is this is no longer journalism, this is flat out propaganda. And they are so right. I mean, even when you think about the CBS News interview that was done on 60 Minutes last weekend, Sunday night, Donald Trump sat down for that one. And when the correspondent asked, hey, like, why is this still going on? And he answered, he said, look, the Democrats, he recently said the other day, they're just totally crazy. But he said to her, look, they want to spend $1.5 trillion on health care for illegals, and I'm not going to have it. I'm just not going to do it. And that's the reason. But she cut all that out. She cut all that out. And it's like, we wouldn't even know that if the White House hadn't put out the entire interview. He sat for 74 minutes. She ran 27 minutes of it. I'm sorry, it's a 60-minute show, right? I guess you get some commercials. So if we assume 22 minutes out of 30 with 8 minutes, sadly, going to commercials, then guess what? You had 44 minutes. And you didn't use the 44 minutes. You just used 27. Because apparently it was, all stuff for the cutting room floor, including his reason for the shutdown. So again, once again, a reflection of the total bias that you see in the media. 87% of the coverage of the shutdown. We have more to get to on the shutdown. I actually think things might be thawing out. But it comes, as Whoopi Goldberg increasingly is under fire, under a microscope. I mean, I'm sort of wondering, because this was very peculiar. This happened on Wednesday of last week. Then on Thursday, we learned that Jimmy's mysteriously off the air. And you wonder what's going on. We know that the FCC is basically, they've given warning after warning after warning to Disney and to Iger. As soon as Donald Trump was elected, Brendan Carr fired off a letter saying, hey, you guys don't have a whole lot of trust with the American people. And he's threatened to say, you know what, we're not going to allow for those affiliate relationships. Why should the affiliates be paying you for garbage like this that's on television? This isn't serving your community. You have a duty to serve your community. And what's amazing, a show like Whoopi's, it comes under the news division. Yeah. And some of you know that. I said this the other day. The reason I know that is because at one point, my agent, I don't have an agent anymore because, it's just you and me. There's a whole new medium, you guys, lately. But I had an agent, and he was like, hey, the View, would you consider them? I'm like, are you crazy? I knew even back then, that would be a danger zone. But it comes under the news division. And I was like, that's weird. So they've got this entertainment show, because let's face it, it's nothing but entertainment. There is no news in that show, just a whole bunch of biased, angry women with TDS like we've never seen before. It's like a terminal case. Anyway, Whoopi got scolded on the air by her bosses. Think about this, for a joke she made. And you know what? She's entitled to make a joke. The problem is she said so many things that are just not accurate that I think they're nervous now. And this little one was kind of a silly thing to pick on, but it shows you how scared ABC is. And you put this together with what may be going on with Jimmy, and I'll tell you, it's got me raising an eyebrow. Watch.
And the other insane thing is that when people are going to go to their meetings with the judge, the meetings that they're supposed to go to, when they're listening to, what the hell, what?
I love when Sonny passes notes.
We don't know if Trump used an auto pen to part. It was a joke.
Yeah.
We don't know if Trump used an auto pen.
Oh, come on.
But we do know that he didn't know who that crypto guy was.
Well, I'm sorry. The hardest thing about this job now is no one understands nuance. When you hear a joke, when somebody's fooling around, when they're not saying something specific, especially on this show. I'm very specific when I'm pointing stuff out. When I'm making jokes, when I'm making jokes. This is ridiculous.
Okay, so what's interesting there is that, in fairness, she was kind of making a joke, and I got the joke. But she said so many things that are so blatantly wrong. A black woman would have a better shot of freedom in Iran today than she would. And she said this in earnest to the point where it got into a little bit of a fight there on the set with some of the other hosts. And then she said quite earnestly that you're going to pay for the ballroom that Trump wants, you as an American taxpayer, despite the fact that he's already paid for it. He's collected all the money from all these different companies. We've run through the list. Comcast, interestingly, Rachel Maddow's employer, was on there. So it's like, Whoopi, okay, you made a joke. I hear you. Like, I understand why she'd be upset, because that one, like, seriously was kind of a joke. And they went after her. So why? That shows you something's up. They are now reaching the point of being frankly scared. Okay, so this is, why Entertainment did a whole thing on it. And you put this together, of course, with Jimmy now being out. And I think you got to start to ask the question, what is going on? Is Jimmy really canceled? Did he maybe put something into a script that the higher up said was going to be a problem, and so he walked out? Is that why it's a personal matter? I don't know. This is conjecture, okay? So, like, in fairness, like, I'll tell you. I'll tell you when I don't know something. But I'll also tell you when I smell something and this doesn't smell good, because if you combine this with what happened to Whoopi the day before, I think ABC is waking up. But, it's high time. I mean, they've been getting away with all kinds of stuff, right? Now suddenly the View's under the microscope, in part because of what Jimmy Kimmel went through. Well, the FCC is going in there and they're saying, wait a second, like, we find a whole bunch of things really, really, really wrong here. Not just the bias that you're presenting on the air, but even within Disney as a corporation itself. There are allegations that it created all kinds of affinity groups, and they had all kinds of requirements that you had to, basically, have purple hair and be like the 251st gender in order to get a role on this one movie. And that could come back to haunt them, because that would actually be against the law. You actually can't do that. I mean, Harvard had to find that one out the hard way. So the broadcast media networks in general, they're under a lot of fire. And I think that they're getting sort of a wake-up call, if you would. And this is what we're seeing, okay, at this particular moment in time, is that wake-up call. Other people are getting wake-up calls. I mentioned subpoenas. We've talked about John Brennan possibly being indicted as early as this week. These cases coming to us out of South Florida. That is where, of course, the FBI launched its raid on Mar-a-Lago. 30 subpoenas are expected to be issued, guys. I want to go to a reporter for the New York Post speaking on Fox, talking about all the people that would be wrapped up in this situation. Here we go.
I think John Brennan and the FBI lovebirds, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, Jim Comey, James Clapper, the whole lot of them, the whole lot of Russia hoaxes, thought that they'd gotten away with it. There was no way that they thought that Donald Trump would, A, survive, the impeachment, the lies, the portraying him as a Russian puppet, a Russian stooge of Vladimir Putin. And then, of course, the 2020 election, when they buried all the bad evidence about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden from the laptop, and they wrote that or signed that Dirty 51 letter, John Brennan again, right in the thick of things. They thought that they had just dispatched Donald Trump to probably to jail, or certainly to ignominy, certainly not to become president again. And it's just their worst nightmares. And I think they probably thought that Donald Trump and his administration would be distracted and not worry about going back to the past and maybe show mercy like Trump did in his first term to Hillary Clinton, but no such thing.
No such thing. You know what? He's now you get John Brennan facing indictment. Again, all these subpoenas going out, CNN talking about the news as well. This is a big deal, guys. And I'm telling you, this administration is committed to figuring out just exactly what went down and how they did it. And we've learned a lot thus far, but more is coming out. Believe me, by the day, and this is why they did not want him winning. Let's go to CNN.
Breaking news, Justice Department prosecutors have just issued a subpoena to former National Intelligence Director James Clapper, a longtime target of President Trump's, and former FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page have also received subpoenas. Sources telling CNN tonight the prosecutors are now moving to subpoena the former CIA Director John Brennan. Caitlin Poland's breaking so much of this. Caitlin, what do you know about these subpoenas?
Well, Aaron, we know that this action from the Justice Department, it's not done yet. Subpoenas have gone out to people, including Lisa Page, Peter Strzok. You remember their names from the FBI investigation in 2016, 2017, and then intelligence chiefs who are either getting subpoenas or expecting to get subpoenas in the coming days. The former CIA director, John Brennan, the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper. But sources are telling Evan Perez and I that it is dozens of subpoenas that are going out to people in the intelligence world from 2017, that all of these subpoenas are coming from investigators based in the Southern District of Florida. So that's where Mar-a-Lago is, but the connections are a little bit more tenuous to this investigation in 2016. That would be Crossfire Hurricane. That's what it was called within the FBI. And the other thing that we know based on our sources is what these subpoenas are asking for is that investigators want people, these former officials, intelligence officials in the federal government, to turn over documents from a pretty narrow window of time, July 2016 to February 2017, things like their text messages, their emails, their computer files, everything related to an intelligence community assessment report that was produced in 2017 that summed up essentially the basis for investigating Russian interference in the 2016 election as well as the Trump campaign. It's something Donald Trump has wanted to see looked into again.
Right, absolutely. And of course, we'll know there was a bipartisan, congressional, fully bipartisan right there.
Wow. All right, so we got a lot going down at this moment in time. It's all coming out. I remember saying to Donald Trump during his first term, Mr. President, why didn't you go after Hillary Clinton? He said, Trish, you know what? She was the wife of a former president. She was my competitor. It just didn't feel very American. And then you think about what they did to him, and that was hardly American. Listen, I started my career at Goldman Sachs covering Latin America, wild town, emerging markets, Venezuela, Argentina, Mexico, and Brazil. That was the wild, wild west. You expect that in those countries. You don't expect what they did to Donald Trump in the United States of America. Absolutely not. And he was optimistic and focused on trying to get the economy back up and running, and boy did he ever, until they shut it all down in 2020. I warned you that was not going to work out well, March 2020. Anyway, he had it going, right? I mean, you had the highest median income that we had ever seen in this country for middle-class Americans going all the way back to JFK. We had low inflation, things were working, right? So, and then, March 2020 rolls around, and they were able to use that, as I warned they would, and away he went. And they thought he'd be gone for good. And then when they got a little nervous about it, maybe the election was a little closer than they thought, they were able to use J6 to their advantage in order to go after him some more. But now he's back, and he's back with a vengeance. I want to go to MSNBC, reporting on one of their own, because John Brennan, you see, doesn't every CIA director dream of becoming a commentator on MSNBC? Oh. You should aspire to more, John, okay? Anyway, one of their own's going down, and here they are reporting on it, saying he is likely to be indicted out of the South Florida DOJ's office, U.S. Attorney's office there. Let's listen in.
Well, so John Brennan is one of the key figures in what really is a massive and sprawling investigation as envisioned down in South Florida. And the reason it's down there, and that's new, we're reporting today that the U.S. Attorney in South Florida is leading this investigation, is because that's where the Mar-a-Lago search was. And so what they're trying to do here is knit together what they see as an ongoing conspiracy to violate Donald Trump's civil rights that began with the Russia investigation and continued on from Obama administration to Biden administration, and then somehow includes the Jack Smith investigations. It's this unified field theory of persecuting Donald Trump. And John Brennan, of course, was a central figure in the preparation of that 2017 assessment into Russian election interference. And of course, the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation figures into that. How this all shakes out, Katie, is anyone's guess, because we've not seen any evidence connecting any of these things, let alone any wrongdoing. And in point of fact, as you well know, John Durham, the special counsel appointed in the Trump administration, looked exhaustively, particularly at the Russian interference assessment and at the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation, and found no criminal wrongdoing by John Brennan or any other major figure. But here the Justice Department is trying to take another crack at this, as we understand.
Lisa?
Every time they
I think
report
what
on
Ken
this,
has just postulated is maybe the most reasonable theory.
postulated. That channel's so bad. It's just so bad. Anyway, look, every time they report on this, whether it's in the New York Times or the Washington Post, it's always how it's all wrong. It's all wrong. But, we've seen a lot of documentation that's come forward that suggests something entirely different. You think about Brennan himself. Brennan, who's like, oh, it's just Tulsi. Tulsi's just no good. I mean, he went on MSNBC, his network of choice, because you see, they pay him to just trash her.
Tulsi Gabbard, she may be impaired on the ethics front, certainly, but she's not impaired on the intellect front. And so I can only presume that she is doing this intentionally mischaracterizing, misrepresenting, and lying about what she has found.
See, I kind of wonder, sir, were you not intentionally mischaracterizing and lying about everything that you found or didn't find? I mean, we can go back to Hunter Biden's laptop, right? When you and 50 other ex-spooks and spies decided to get together to sign a letter in Politico saying it was nothing but Russian misinformation, disinformation. Oh yeah, here's the headline in Politico. Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinformation. Dozens of former intel officials say more than 50 intelligence officials signed a letter casting doubt on the New York Post story on the former vice president's son. You know what? If I'm the New York Post, boy, I'm never forgiving them for that one. I'm looking at the letter right here. We are all individuals who devoted significant portions of our lives to national security. Some of us served in senior positions in policy departments and agencies, and some of us served in senior positions in the intel community. Some of us were political employees. Some of us were career officials. Many of us worked for presidents or both parties. In other words, trust us because we are as important as hell. We are hot. You know what? So they go on and on and on about how this is just basically an influence operation, and the Russians had these overt and covert activities that undermine U.S. national security, and some of us, knowing Russian behavior intimately, they say, as we have worked to defend our nation against it for a career, know that this is just more of the same. Except it wasn't. It wasn't. No, the Hunter Biden laptop was really Hunter Biden's laptop. And he was actually already being investigated by the FBI because some of the things on the laptop were quite questionable. So, why would they do that? And then on top of it, go out there and lie about it after the fact. I love this clip. So I want to show you. This is from John Brennan the other day, and somebody confronted him about it. He gets like all, I don't know, macho. Did they teach you how to fight in the CIA, John? Because he's like, don't you dare say these things. We never called it disinformation. Excuse me, sir. You put the headline in the Politico website quite deliberately. I mean, you guys chose it. I'm sure you massaged that headline like you wouldn't believe. And that headline does say, does it not, that it's Russian disinformation. And yet he's trying to fall back on this.
Why didn't you on the Hunter Biden case? Why say it? Because I think, and you misrepresented that. We never said it was disinformation. We said it was Russian influence operations, which is what they do. There's a big difference between influence operations. No, you don't know that. Yes, Comey knew. Comey knew.
The literature said it had all the hallmarks.
Russian disinformation or Russian influence. Take your pick. But again, I'm going with that line. Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinformation. And they gave Politico this letter, okay? This letter saying that Hunter Biden laptop, nothing to see here. And you compile that together with, the CIA refusing, up until rather recently, actually, after every other three-letter agency came out and admitted, yes, the Wuhan lab actually manufactured the virus that took down the country in 2020. And quite possibly the president, right? I mean, they wouldn't admit that. And you weren't allowed to talk about these things in the mainstream media. So I think that, like, it's pretty clear that nobody trusts you guys anymore at all. And you know what? We shouldn't. Because normal people put 1 + 1 together and get 2. You guys put 1 + 1 together and you get, I don't know, 83,000. Like, you come up with a totally different story. And none of it makes sense. And guess what? In this new medium in which we all live, we can actually talk freely and openly most of the time, right? So there's a different opinion out there. You can get more information. And isn't that beautiful? I mean, think about this. Nancy Pelosi, right? The Federalist, finding out that the J6 committee actually tried to hide some evidence suggesting that Trump had pushed to get the National Guard in there, all while Nancy Pelosi pretends like he never wanted it. In fact, as recently as August, she was saying Donald Trump delayed deploying the National Guard on January 6th when our Capitol was under violent attack and lives were at stake. Now, she complains he's activating the D.C. Guard to distract from his incompetent mishandling of terrorist healthcare, etc. Well, guess what? The guy who was then head of the Capitol Hill Police reminds her, ma'am, you know what? It's long past the time to be honest with the American people. On January 3rd, I requested National Guard assistance, but your Sergeant-at-Arms, Nancy Pelosi, denied it. Under federal law 2 U.S.C. 1970, I was prohibited from calling them in without specific approval that same day. A woman over at the Pentagon offered National Guard support, but I was forced to decline because I lacked the legal authority on January 6th when the Capitol was under attack, and despite my repeated calls, your Sergeant of Arms, again, denied my urgent request for 70 agonizing minutes, running it up the food chain, as he said, for your approval. When assistance was needed, it was denied. So what the heck was that? And yet Donald Trump was trying to get assistance, and they try and bury that one. And then Nancy acts like she had no role in this whatsoever. I mean, this particular, I showed you guys this one last week, but it's just a great soundbite. We're going to watch it again. I love the look on the reporter's face, too, as she turns around back to the camera. She's like, I got her. Nancy, who is now no longer going to participate in politics because she announced her resignation. Woo! It took, a lot of years, perhaps 39 too many. She responded in kind of a, I don't know. I call this kind of flat out crazy. I mean, she kind of lost it on this reporter. Unnecessarily so. Watch.
Congresswoman Pelosi, are you at all concerned that the new January 6th committee will find you liable for that day? Are you at all concerned about the new January 6th committee finding you liable for that day? Why did you refuse the National Guard on January 6th?
Shut up. I did not refuse the National Guard. The president didn't send it. Why are you coming here with Republican talking points as if you're a serious journalist?
The American people want to know. We still have questions. Thank you.
Right? She's like, I got her. And you did get her. They do still have questions. And you know what, Nancy, if you're actually going to be honest with people, you'd admit that you actually were responsible. In fact, you know you're responsible. We found some candid camera of you admitting it on January 6th.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
So, I think that pretty much settles it, right? Nancy, you screwed up. They asked you for help days before. You didn't bring in help. Instead, you brought in your daughter, Alexandra Pelosi, to shoot that lovely documentary film, which then played on a loop on CNN. I'm kind of wondering, did she get paid for that? Did CNN actually buy the footage? Alexandra was brought in to film the whole thing, not CNN. The daughter of Nancy Pelosi. Question that, guys. I question it as a journalist because it seems an odd thing to do. I mean, you didn't have any journalist friends at any of those friendly networks like MSNBC, nothing? CNN wouldn't help you out. You had to have your daughter shoot all this while you refused for 70 minutes to get the National Guard in there. I think we got questions, a lot of them. Kathy Hochul, meanwhile, she's freaking out. She's going to be the next Nancy Pelosi saying, bye-bye, sayonara, see ya, adios, baby, because guess what? She's got one Elise Stefanik coming for her job, and I think Elise is going to get it.
I'm running for governor to make New York affordable and safe. We have seen decades of single-party rule led by Democrats, and Kathy Hochul is the worst governor in America. New York is the most unaffordable state in the nation, with the highest taxes, the highest energy bills, the highest utility bills. We also have a crime crisis because Kathy Hochul has brought us failed bail reform and has embraced the defund the police Democrats. And after this week, Ainsley, when we saw a raging anti-Semite, pro-Hamas communist who wants to raise taxes, and frankly, he barely won the majority of New York City voters, Kathy Hochul endorsed him and bent the knee. She has failed New Yorkers. So this is a broad coalition of Republicans, independents, and Democrats who know that enough is enough. We need common sense leadership to make New York affordable and safe again.
And she may get it. I mean, look, this isn't Kathy. It's a different poll, but it shows you that the unfavorables, say on like a Chuck Schumer, are pretty high. Letitia James is also, I think, struggling because people are so mad at her because she used taxpayer dollars, is still using taxpayer dollars. That was actually discovered by Elise Stefanik, and that's going to help her career as well. You know, she was the one who reported on Tish James using money to pay her lawyers because of her own private legal woes. And according to the Albany Times, she filed some things this past week. And after saying she wasn't going to use the $10 million that Kathy Hochul had carved out for her, guess what? She did. Said it was being paid for by state dollars, taxpayer dollars. So I think that's not going to fly. And the most recent polls that I have seen suggest that Elise Stefanik is actually already, before she even declared, ahead of one Kathy Hochul, who's not in sync with some of the most important issues that are facing voters outside of New York City. Now, New York City is a microcosm. And don't forget, she's out there, as Elise pointed out, supporting the communist who wants to tax everyone, like to the point of, I think it's going to be something like, I mean, if you're looking at New York taxes already being near 15%, you'd be up around 17%. If you happen to make $1 million, I mean, you know what's going to happen. People are going to leave. They're going to leave. They're going to leave. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you stick around New York? You wouldn't, okay? That's the simple answer. I'm going to actually talk about that a little bit more on my other channel. I have another channel that I actually haven't been on recently, but we're recommitting to it at 76 Research. I encourage you to go over to the 76 Research channel on YouTube. I also encourage you guys, you know what, to go check out my Spotify. Have you seen the Spotify channel? Because we could use your help over there. Let me see if I can get that up for you in the show notes, because I think it is in the show notes, but let me see if I can put it into the conversation, if that's possible. This is requiring some serious tech skills, so I actually need you to really and truly promise me that you're going to go over and subscribe to the Spotify channel. There we go. I did it. That's amazing. Okay, so like I can walk and chew gum at the same time. Who knew? Anyway, it's good to see you. We got a new crowd here tonight. I do see like My Cat Crazy. I'm glad you made it. Hope you guys are getting the alerts. But I do see some new faces in here. So Billy, good to see you back here. Very, very good to see you. Ian, you got here for the live. I know you missed the last one, so thank you for being here. It's important that you do hit the alert button, the bell, and say that you want to get them all, that you just want all of them for Trish Regan. And then you do have to click on them, because if you don't consistently click on them, YouTube figures you don't care anymore. Anyway, so great to have you here. I love seeing all of you. We have been able to create great things. Yes, Ian, I see your message. Cat Crazy as well. Good to have you guys. And I want you to enjoy the rest of your weekend. Just know that I do think something very suspicious is going on right now at ABC, and I think they're freaking out. They should have freaked out ages ago, but they're kind of late to the party. Better late than never, I guess. Carter, thank you so much. I wish Memdami would resign as well now. But it's not going to work. Like, it's just not going to work. Like, it's been tried. He's a moron, by the way, because clearly, he hasn't studied history. I mean, anybody who's studied history knows this has been tried over and over and over and over again. It is never going to work. And you know what's going to happen? Anybody who can leaves. Jamie Dimon, who runs the biggest bank in the world, JP Morgan, he's nervous, right? Because they just built a new building. I'm actually going to show you some sound on 76 Research from Jamie Dimon. So join me over there on that little teeny tiny channel. Okay, I'll see you there shortly in just about 10 minutes. But thank you. Do me a favor. Do go. And Carter, thank you for your generosity. Do go over to Spotify and get that free podcast. Sign up, maybe give it a review. It could use a little help, all right? We're doing great over here. We got over 1 million. I love it. And do what you can for 76 Research, at 76 Research. Although I'll warn you, you actually have to like finance because we're like nitty gritty markets and finance. Okay, so you get to see me totally wonk out. I warn you. All right, I warn you. But anyway, thank you again. And I will see you all possibly there. And if not, over the weekend here on the channel and live on Monday. Have a good one.